Okay, I got it. All righty. Okay. So tonight we're going to talk about God's existence, as I said. So that's always exciting. It's certainly a very important topic, no doubt about it. And this is the question of all questions. So last week we kind of went over this outline. I think some of you saw it. We kind of spent some time on truth. We spent some time on logic. I hope we all understand it's really hard to even talk or think or do anything without using the laws of logic. Logic is just correct reasoning. So, like I said last week, if you have a problem with someone said you can't use logic with God, they just simply do not quite understand what's going on there. But anyway, hopefully I covered that last week and you got the PDF and you can look at it again. If you have any more questions about that, let me know. So tonight, we're going to venture into number 3, spend some time on this. So tonight we're going to be arguing or talking about a personal God. We're not talking about a God who's impersonal or like the force be with you God, that kind of God, like in Star Wars, like it's just an impersonal force everywhere, or it's just like the God of I'm spiritual but not religious God. We're not talking about that God. We're making a case for a personal God, the God of the Bible, which is involved in people's lives. It's not a deistic God where he just wound up the universe and stopped. It's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of the Bible, the God of Jesus. Anyway, so we'll talk all about this. But anyway, so I hope that we all view Christianity as a picture of reality. I hope that we all view Christianity as a worldview. Last week, I said the truth is what matches reality. Truth is what corresponds to reality. That means if you say something, if I say Jesus rose from the dead, of course, I am making a claim about reality, or I say God exists, I'm making a claim about reality, of course. So when Muslims say to me that Muhammad received the Quran or through the angel Gabriel, through Allah to the angel Gabriel to Muhammad in the 6th century, around that time when Muhammad had these visions in a cave, they think that's how the Quran came to be. So they're telling me that I don't think that matches reality. I don't think that corresponds to reality. I don't think they're making claims that match reality. So I know they think they do, but I don't think the evidence bears out that the Quran was really a revelation from Allah. I just don't think it's there. The evidence is there. Of course, that's a whole topic for another time. Anyway, okay. So of course, in any worldview, the big question is who gets to be God? I mean, any worldview, because people have different worldviews. A worldview is the way you view reality, right? And it explains everything around you, the way you view reality. And today we've got a lot of competing worldviews. Of course, from a money perspective, we talk about materialism. The end, a lot of people think in the end, the one with the most toys wins. But as we know, the one with the most toys dies too. Okay, so they don't get to take their toys with them. So at the end of the day, they really don't win. They either win because they're with God or they don't win. So they win or lose, right? So you can acquire a lot of stuff in this life. They may help you, and I'm not against having your needs met, whatever. But as we know, you don't get to take any of that with you. I had a family member that was always asking me about their stuff, but right before they passed away, to make sure where it was, and they knew where it was and what was going to happen to it. They're worried about their stuff. And I finally said to them, you're not going to be worried about any of this shortly, because you're not going to be thinking about it. So we got it taken care of. And then we have, of course, a lot of individualism in the culture. Obviously, me first. The goal is to be happy and to make me happy. I'm the center of everything. Of course, a lot of that is going on. It's been going on for a long time. We have a lot of hedonism, emotionalism. People just do what feels good, right? That's been going on a long time. Plenty of people that believe that. Just pursue whatever makes you feel good. And of course, pragmatism's still around. Do different strokes for different folks. Do whatever works for you. Christianity works for you, that's great. I'll try Islam, I'll try Buddhism, I'll try New Age spirituality. So there's a lot of these things are going around. They've been around a long time. They're still around. So not going away, by the way, not going away. A lot of these views, okay? All right, don't worry if you don't get it all down. You're writing this down. You'll be able to get the slide set. Like I said, I'll send it out and you can, if I don't have your email, you need to put it in the chat room, okay? Okay, so when we're on campus at the Ohio State University, I have to say the Ohio State University here in Columbus, Ohio, which I think is the third largest university in the country. And we do our missionary work there, and we do it at a community college as well. But we do our does God exist question. This is the most popular question of all. This is the question that students just love to come by because it's 3 words, it's easy to answer, and they've got a yes, no, or don't know option. And of course, like I show here, a lot of people do say yes. And you may say to yourself, well, what do you say to them when they say yes? I say to them, why do you say yes? I will say to them, can you give me a reason, or what's your biggest reason why you say yes? And probably about 90% of the time, the reason they say yes is creation. They do not, believe it or not, on a college campus, you think everybody believes that they're an evolutionary accident, right? Because that's what they teach. But there's actually still a lot of people that don't buy into the chance accident, that you're just an accident of nature model. They actually believe that the world is too intricately put together, too much order, too much design to say there's no God. So a lot of people say creation. And then the second most popular thing they say is religious experience. They've experienced God in their life. I never hear any arguments for the resurrection, never hear any strong arguments for Jesus, just creation and that they've seen God work in their life. Of course, it can be Christians, it could be other people say yes to believe in other gods, it could be a Muslim, could be someone else from a different background, but a lot of people do answer this are Christians that say yes. The no's are, of course, you have to ask them why they say no, and then of course the ones that say don't know, you have to ask them what would convince them that they could know God exists, or why do they say don't know. But anyway, the reason we ask this question so much, here's my point, where I'm going with this. See, the does God exist question is the most important question of humanity. Okay, this question is the question of all questions, and this question impacts everything else in life. Okay, it has major implications. That's why if we don't ever teach this question or talk about this question in the education system, it's a tragedy, because it impacts everything. I mean, it impacts the way you view reality. It impacts the way you value people. People want to fight for people all the time, people's rights, people's dignity. We're obsessed with rights and equality. If God doesn't exist, there are no rights. And if God doesn't exist, nobody matters. So you can fight all you want for another person, but if God doesn't exist, I don't know why you think they have value. What gives them value? Well, you might say, well, I give them value. Well, what if someone else doesn't give them value? Okay. So of course, God's existence impacts your morality and ethical choices. It impacts the way you view where you came from. Are we a blind cosmic accident, or are we created in the image of God? Certainly impacts where we're going, our view of destiny, of course, what happens to us when we die. It impacts your identity, who we think we are. What is our core identity? Is our identity in our sexuality, our gender, like a lot of people say today? Is it in politics, or is it in being an image bearer of God? And purpose, of course, why you here. It impacts how you view purpose as well. So the God's existence question impacts all these things. So to say that when people walk by me, back here, and they want to talk and they see our question, you better believe I'm going to challenge them to really think about it hard. I'm not going to let them get away with it just to say, well, it's no big deal and I'm just doing my thing. Well, I bring up to them that, this question impacts everything else. So it is a really, really, if not the most important question of all. Okay, who here, if you don't have to raise your hand because I know you can't, but if any of you have ever seen the show Antique Roadshow, it's a great show. I don't know if you ever, I used to watch this with my mom. But an Antique Roadshow, what happens is people find antiques, of course, right? They find these rare items they've had in their house, or they found it somewhere else. And then they go to this Antique Roadshow where these experts are that understand the antiques, like this guy with the blonde hair here. He's an antique dealer and he knows everything. So This woman brought in her chairs to have her chairs looked at. She wants to know, they bring the stuff in, they'll say, what do you think it's worth? What do you think the value of this is? What should I do with these chairs? And of course, you know what the Antique Roadshow expert does, the guy right here with the blonde hair, he, as they all do, he says, well, I can't answer that question until I answer a couple other questions. And the first question is, what kind of chair is this? And also, what's this made of? What kind of wood is this? What's the nature of this chair? What's it made of? Okay. What kind of thing is this? And secondly, where did it come from? He's going to ask the lady, where did this come from? Where'd you get this? And until he figures those two things out, he really can't give her a good value. He can't tell her what it's worth and what to do with these chairs. He's got to figure out what kind of wood is this? What's the nature of this chair and where did it come from? Okay, very important. And see, that plays a role in how we view everything. It's the same kind of thing, because how we treat humans and how we determine how humans have value or dignity is based on the first two questions. What are we as humans and where do we come from? Okay. Until you answer those two questions, you can't answer the other two. It's like a girl that came up to me once at Ohio State and said to me last year, she said, I'm an atheist. And she said, do you believe in supporting this cause for this people group? And she said, do you believe those people matter? And I said, so you're an atheist? And she said, yeah. I said, well, why does anyone matter on your worldview? Why are you fighting for this people group on your worldview if you're an atheist? Like, nobody matters on your worldview. And she's like, oh, I never thought of that. And I was like, yeah, of course, because there's no way to ground anything about humans apart from God. You don't have any grounding point. Okay. It's just going to be based on your opinion versus my opinion. Okay. So if you think that if no God exists, then if you think that you are just a glob of matter and you don't have a soul, there's no spirits, there's nothing else, you're just a biological organism trying to survive, like survival of the fittest. Well, then if that's your worldview, then I guess you can define yourself whatever you want to be. You can define your own gender, you can define your own sexuality, you can define anything, define your own identity any way you want, because that's all you are, is just a material accident, or we might say a natural accident, and we might say you're just a glob of physical matter, right? That's the worldview of physicalism, naturalism, materialism, okay? And some people believe that, not everybody, but there's certainly a lot of people that are taught that on college campuses, some kind of version of that. There's different versions of it. And then if you believe that this is where you came from, that purposeless evolution cast you up alongside other living species, you're an accident of nature, then I guess you just have to make the most of it. You are your own God. You navigate reality. You make your own moral values and duties. You decide what people matter and don't matter. You create your own happiness. Do what you want to do because you are your own God. So that you can see why the God question plays a huge role in how we view reality, right? And how we view others. Now, so sometimes this comes up, when we prove God's existence. Well, just remember that there's a difference between proof and persuasion. Okay, whether when someone talks to me about wanting reasons for knowing God exists or proofs, when I do that, I know that I cannot actually persuade that person. The only thing that's going to persuade them is the Holy Spirit working in their heart. And also whether they're persuaded depends on, their life experience, depends on their presuppositions, the way they view reality. It depends on the structure of their worldview. It depends on a lot of factors. Okay. But just because they're not persuaded doesn't mean I haven't given a good argument. It just means that there's other factors going on there. Okay. So don't be worried if you ever talk about these issues and someone says, well, I'm not persuaded. Well, you're not. Persuasion is more of a subjective thing. Okay. That's not really, the proofs are objective. The persuasion factor is subjective and has a lot to do with, there's a lot of other factors involved there. Okay. So let's talk about some reasons for a personal theistic God. So when I say a personal God, I mean a God or a being that has rationality, is self-conscious, and has a will, has a volitional will. That's what I mean by volition, your will. These are things that we have as humans. Okay, we have rationality, we have self-consciousness, and we have a will. And that's part of, some people may think that's part of being made in the image of God, but we have all these features every day. Okay. I mean, you can't survive without them, but they're there. So we talk about a personal God. We need to ask a question. So the reason people have such a struggle with figuring out how to approach whether there's a God or not is they forget this question. They forget this issue. And that is the fact that what I mean by the nature of the object determines how we know it. So I'm looking at my phone right now. This is a physical object. I can see it. I can touch it. Let's see. Here's my water bottle. I can see it. I can touch it. It's made of plastic. I can verify that with my 5 senses. Can see the shape. I can, look at the shape of it, tell you what kind of shape it is. So that's the nature of those things. The nature of these things are physical, right? They're not non-visible. You can see them, you can touch them, you can verify them. That's why just about everything is in life. A lot of things, not everything, but a lot of things you can verify around you with your 5 senses. But when it comes to God, see, God's different. Okay, because what God is he's not a physical object. Okay, so we talk about God's nature, essence. We're talking about what he is. Okay, I'm a physical being, I have matter, I have a soul. You can't see my soul, but you can kind of feel me and know what I am, but God's different. So some people think God's supposed to fit into this category. He's supposed to, well, maybe God should just be like a house or a car. He should be a physical object, and that's why people are like, well, I can't see God. I can't touch God. I can't hear him. I can't smell him. I can't use my 5 senses. That's because God is a different kind of being. All right. He's not in the same category as about 80 to 90% of the other things in our lives. Okay. And so we have to figure out how we're going to approach a God that we can't see directly, that we can't touch directly. We can't really smell him, as far as I know. Some people think they hear God, but that's a whole other topic for another time. But the point is that doesn't fit in these categories. Okay. So when we, if you think about it, there's a lot of things that we do not see directly. Like, I don't see these things. I can't see electrons directly, or protons, or neutrons, or atoms. I can't see electric fields, or magnetic fields, or gravitational fields. I can't even see justice. People say, I want justice. I can't see, there's no like justice molecule I can see. I can see the effects of justice, certainly, when the justice system works, which a lot of times it doesn't. I can't see consciousness. I can't see the wind directly. I can't see any of those things directly. What I do see is I see the effects of them. I don't really see anything directly, but I can infer by looking at the branch blowing outside, or the tree going back and forth. The wind is impacting that tree. I see the effects of the wind, or I might see the behavior of charged particles, or these are things you just don't see directly. You infer their existence. What I mean by inferring is that you may not see them directly, but you can infer it. You infer things all day long. And so it's the same thing with God. We don't see God directly, but we see the effects of God. Okay, we can infer the existence of God from his effects in the world, which are all around us. Okay, we can look at all the things in the created order and infer there's a God. Okay, so we see effects, and then we say, well, what's the cause of that effect? What are these? Some of these things I see, I don't see them directly, but I see the effects. But what is the cause for that, right? And when we do an inference, that means that we're just really trying to, we see something, we're trying to reach a conclusion, about something. We might see it, may say, okay, I'm trying to infer what the best explanation for that thing is. You know what I mean? Like what caused that, right? And this is one of the ways we know God exists, by his effects. Okay. I think if you walk down the beach and you see a really, really cool sand feature like this, sandcastle, whatever you want to call it, carved out like Jesus here, I mean, most of you are going to walk along and go, that is really impressive. I bet just the wind and the erosion and the rain and the sand over time just made this giant sculpture of Jesus here. You're just going to say it just happened naturally, right? No, of course not. You're going to say, wow, whoever did that is really gifted. I mean, I couldn't do that if I tried, by the way. But the point is that you know that it took an intelligent mind to make that sandcastle. You know it took a creative mind. You know it took, it wasn't caused by just a natural process. Where on the right, when you're in a sand dune, you're walking along, I mean, you're like, yeah, that's part of nature. I mean, the sand blows, it's pretty, but, you know, God created at one point, but you're not really, it's not as clear that that's like, it has like a signature of intelligence as much as that sand castle does, right? Or that sculpture here, right? Same thing when you look at Mount Rushmore. You know, you look at these faces, you obviously are not going to say, well, I guess the wind and the erosion and the stone over time just came together and carved these faces of our presidents, right? Or, you know, I don't think you probably came to that conclusion. You know that took some serious sculpting from an intelligent mind. It took a long time to do that. That's phenomenal, right? Whereas you look at the Grand Canyon, you're like, wow, that's amazing too, but it's not as clear that took, you know, that some sculpting from an intelligent agent. Now we could talk about the Grand Canyon being caused by the flood and all that stuff. I don't want to talk about that right now. But the point is that you see the difference I'm trying to make. You look at certain effects and then you say, what's the cause of that effect? In this case, you see the effect of that. You look at the cause, you say it's intelligent. You look there, you look at the cause, you say it's an intelligent mind. Same thing if you find when they found this cave in southern France, the humans used this cave from 37,000 to 33,500 years ago, right? You know that it took an intelligent mind to carve this on a cave to make this illustration, right? I doubt like just time and some sand and, you know, stone just came together and formed these drawings, right? Same thing when in archaeology, when they find, you know, things in the past, they can tell that an intelligent mind is behind this. No wind or erosion or time with sand or mud, whatever, was able to carve these little things on this seal ring from the Hittites. They're mentioned in the Bible when they found these. You find all kinds of stuff like this. This marks intelligence, right? So you make it an inference to these were designed by a human, right? They were designed by a human. Same thing when criminal investigators find a body. You know, they walk by and they say, well, did this happen by accident? Was he pushed intentionally by somebody? Was it designed that way, or did it have to happen? I mean, you have to make these kind of inferences in criminal investigations as well. Now, the reason I bring this up, because one of the clearest ways we know God exists is through design. And there's a guy named Douglas Axe. He's a biologist. He wrote a book called Undeniable. And basically he talks about how intuitively we know things are designed from a very early age. He says that preschool children around the world, if you study education, they tend to start looking at the world around them very early, and they see like a godlike designer very early on. They do it like intuitively, meaning that it's something instinctive they know. Even when it's contrary to their parents' beliefs. Their parents can say there's no God, but they're able to look at the world around them and certain features of reality know there's a designer. They just know it intuitively. So that's why if you have kids, you're trying to teach them how they know God exists. Just start on this premise that they have this design intuition. Okay, I think a lot of people on campus, like I showed you that picture, does God exist? They have this intuition as well. Even Alison Gopnik wrote this. She teaches at Berkeley. I call it Berserkly. But she's an atheist. She even says by elementary school age, children start to invoke an ultimate godlike designer to explain the complexity of the world around them, even children brought up by atheists. So it sounds a lot like Romans 1, where Paul says, through the creation of the world, God has made himself known through the things that are made, right? His invisible attributes, his divine power have been clearly seen through what has been made. Very similar to Romans 1. So let's talk about some of the effects we see. Let's talk about 4 things that we see, features. Okay, we talked about we can't see God directly, right? But we see his effects. And some of the things we see are that we have observed or have been observed in the scientific realm are that the universe exists. Obviously, you guys, yeah, no duh. But the fact that the universe, they know now had a beginning, and the time, space, matter had a beginning. Okay, they used to think the universe had always existed. They always thought the universe was eternal, was always eternal. Then the evidence came in and they're like, wow, now it looks like it has a cosmic beginning. And that sounds kind of like Genesis. We also can observe the universe is precisely set up for life on Earth. It has to be just a certain way for us even to have life on Earth, even to get life going on Earth. Then, not only do we need a universe set up for life on Earth, we need a planet that's set up to support and sustain life on Earth. You can't just have any old planet. You can't just have any old universe. And then we also know the DNA that's in your body is an instruction manual blueprint for the human cell. And so we're going to talk about some of these things, and I think that you'll find them very interesting. So let's talk a little bit about, if you want to go deeper on these topics, I recommend these two books. If you want more of the real detailed, good history, a lot of historical, a lot of very documented well. Just came out the last couple of years with Stephen Meyer's book, The Return of the God Hypothesis. He talks about 3 scientific discoveries that have come out. But if you want like a layman version that's still really good, you can also get my friend James Warner Wallace's book, God's Crime Scene. So that's a pretty good book too. Talks about some of these things in greater detail. Okay. But they're very good. Very good information, and they're excellent. Okay. So we talk about the design argument. We're talking, this is what we call the teleological argument. It means it's derived from the Greek word telos, which means purpose or goal. So you guys actually in life, you have teleological goals. You may say, no, I don't know what that is. Well, you have goals where you're planning way further out, that you have an end goal for certain things, like you have long-term goals, short-term goals, but you have a purpose or aim there. You're trying to hit this goal. You have foresight long-term, like this is what I want to be doing 20 years, or this is my financial goal, or this is a health goal, a physical goal for my body. Well, those are teleological goals. Okay, everybody has them. And the teleological argument looks at things in reality and looks at the idea of order and purpose. Okay, so when we talk about certain things that we're about to look at, you can either explain things you can explain things in a couple ways. You see these effects, like we talked about, you can either say they're caused by an intelligent personal God. We talked about the definition of personal, a being that's endowed with rationality, self-consciousness, and volition. Or you could just say that there is no God, and these things resulted from no mind, no intelligence, no creator. They came from an undirected natural process. Basically, they're accidental, completely accidental. That's the opposite of intentional, right? You know the difference between intentional and accidental, right? If I accidentally knock my water bottle over right now, that's an accident. But if I go like this and knock it over, that's intentional. Yeah, you guys know that. All right. So we talk about the does God exist question. This is kind of the default position with no God. This is the way people would have to view reality. And we're going to talk about the opposite of this. But for someone that says there's no God, they would have to believe the universe came from a mindless, non-conscious, non-moral process, that human beings were produced by an undirected, valueless process. Life emerged from non-living matter accidentally. And there was many universes out there, and we just got lucky. There happened to be one that turned out to be just right for us. Okay, so basically we are just a random chance accident. And of course, some people believe that. I don't think they thought about the full implications. But you get in academic circles or get in college campuses, this is generally kind of the default worldview some people are supposed to believe. Not everybody believes it, but of course many do. So whenever someone comes to you and they say, well, science is the way of knowing everything, science, we got to get scientific arguments. Science is The most important thing, we got to test it scientifically. You got to give me scientific evidence. So just remember, there's two different kinds of explanations. Okay, scientific explanations are fine, but that deals with kind of the impersonal laws of nature, right? I mean, the laws of nature are not personal in science, and they just study natural causes. Okay, they're not looking for God, and they're not looking for intelligent explanations, intelligent beings. They're not looking for intelligent agents. And the opposite of that are what we call personal explanations. And that's where you have a mind involved there. Like we are personal explanations for things. We cause things to happen, right? We make a choice and we carry it out. And so there's different kinds of explanations on the table other than scientific explanations. Scientific explanations are one way of knowing things, but they're not the only way, okay? So one of the things we have observed, one of the effects God has left us, is the way the universe is set up. So whenever someone comes to you and they say, well, I don't really know if there's any evidence for God. I don't know if there's any proof for God. I don't know. Here's what you need to say to them. Are you saying there's no arguments for God? Okay. An argument is this right here. An argument involves premise one, premise two, and a conclusion. 1, 2, 3. That's an argument. Okay. So when someone says that to you, you just need to ask them, have you looked at the arguments for God? These are arguments I'm laying out. Premise one, premise two, and a conclusion. It's called a syllogism. Okay. My son learned this last year. He's 15. I told him, if you can learn how to lay out an argument, doing a syllogism, giving your first premise, second premise, and conclusion, you will be light years ahead of many college students, because college students don't learn logic in public schools. They don't teach it. So you learn in homeschooling, but they don't teach it in public schools. I'm not trying to rag on public schools. I'm just saying it hurts them in the long run, because they do need some basics of logic to get through college, and they don't. Since I do college ministry, I see that they don't teach it. Okay, so this is an argument. Premise one, premise two, conclusion. Okay, if the universe is fine-tuned for life on Earth, then the best explanation for the fine-tuning of the universe is a personal God. Oops, I did it again. And premise two, the universe is fine-tuned for life on Earth. Therefore, the conclusion, the best explanation for a fine-tuning universe is a personal God. I'll define what I mean here. So we're talking about fine-tuning. We're talking about advanced planning. We're talking about the ability for an intelligent mind or an intelligent being, such as God, to foresee the need for the kind of universe that had to be planned out in order for life to get going on Earth, in order for you and I to be here. Now, if you guys think about it, when it comes to planning, by the way, that's another syllogism right there. 1, 2, 3, premise one, premise two, conclusion. If you think about it, you guys plan. We plan. We try to plan, and we don't do a good job on planning some things. And we know that we cannot be a success in life unless we do some planning. I think that you guys know that there's no mindless process that can do the following. It takes a mind to plan education. That's our mind, right? We try to plan our health. We try to write up wills and plan for retirement. And of course, government tries to plan for the long term. They try to set goals and try to pass things. They obviously mess it up royally. But the point is that planning is everywhere, right? And planning comes from a mind. So think about some of these things right here. Think about the planning it took to come up with the city that you guys live in, the planning for the downtown, the buildings, the transportation system, everything, or the health system, whatever. Don't you think that a universe would take a lot more planning than these things? These are like child's play compared to planning an entire universe out for life on Earth. Don't you think so? So it's amazing to me that people don't see the need for a mind behind our universe. They just say it just happened. It just turned out that way. We just got lucky. That's phenomenal, isn't it? There's a guy named Martin Rees. He's not a Christian, but he wrote a book a long time ago. He's a British cosmologist. He wrote a book called Just Six Numbers. And he wrote in this book, the mathematics required for human life boils down to 6 numbers. He said, these numbers were built into the Big Bang, which I'll talk about in a minute, and must have precise values they possess for our world to be hospitable to humans. He says, even if any of these numbers are different, even the tiniest degree, there'd be no stars, no complex life elements, or no life. You see, so these guys know what it takes for the kind of universe we need to get life going on Earth. So these constants they talk about are these set values that when the universe came into existence have to be set right then. The laws of gravity, electromagnetic force, the strong nuclear force, the weak nuclear force. All these things have to be precisely set up when the universe comes to existence. Otherwise, there's no life that gets going. Okay? So what happened was the fine-tuning argument actually started in physics journals. It didn't start as some sort of religious argument. The physics journal started coming out with this evidence that the universe looked like it was totally fine-tuned. Basically, it was rigged for life. And there's a great book there by Luke Barnes called A Fortunate Universe. But a lot of the physicists that weren't even Christians were kind of mad because they're like, I don't know, this sounds like the universe may be designed, and they didn't like it. Okay. So the physics journals were the ones that started coming out with the evidence the universe was fine-tuned for life. It wasn't like the Bible, it was these physics journals. And now we're up to people writing all kinds of books on these topics. You can get any of these books on the fine-tuning or the design of the universe, any of these books, but you'll get the slide set. If you're not familiar with Hugh Ross, he's an astrophysicist. He's got a newer book out called Design to the Core. You can look up his lectures on this. He's done some lectures on this book, and he's done some interviews. It's just fascinating. He literally knows, he knows exactly what it would take for us to even exist, like the kind of universe we need, the kind of Earth we need, and how it is so intrinsically put together so delicately so we can even exist. The detail is just amazing. So I encourage you to look up some of his lectures. These are really good. There's not a lot of debate whether the universe is fine-tuned. These guys right here that all believe the universe is fine-tuned for life are not even all Christians. Even Stephen Hawking, who wasn't a Christian, believed the universe is fine-tuned. A lot of these names here are not all Christians. The problem is they just don't agree with what caused the fine-tuning. That's where the debate is, what actually caused the fine-tuning. This guy that I think he's at Berkeley, I don't know if he's still alive, Charles Towns, a physicist. He says, intelligent design, as one sees it from a scientific point of view, seems to be quite real. This is a very special universe. It's remarkable that it came out just the way it is. If the laws of physics weren't just the way we are, we couldn't be here at all. The sun couldn't be there. The laws of gravity, and the nuclear laws of magnetic theory, quantum mechanics, and so on have to be just the way they are for us to be here. I maintain the science is closely related to that because science tries to understand how the universe is constructed and why it does what it does. I don't think he's a Christian. I don't think he is. I'm not sure. So there's a lot of these constants that have to be in place, which I have on a Jay Richards link here. I'll send it to you in the slide set. But these are some of the things that have to be in place just for us to even exist. I know these all may be technical. You may understand them all, so I'll send you the link here on the slide so you can look them up. But these are some of the things that have to be in place for even to get a universe going to even allow life on Earth. Okay, the gravitational force constant, electromagnetic force constant, strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, cosmological constants, and a bunch of other things too. So there's a lot of detail that is needed for to get the right universe. So, it's like you want to kind of think of it like a stereo. If you guys remember those old stereos, I don't know how old all you are, but I'm older than a lot of you. Maybe I'm same age, maybe I'm younger, I don't know. But remember your stereo, you try to tune it in, turn the knob a certain way to get the right frequency, right? You do that sometimes on your car too. Well, that's what fine tuning is. You have to tune it just right to get that end result the way you want it. So it's like this guy here, David Deutsch said here. He said, if we nudge one of these constants just a few percent one direction, stars burn out within 1 million years of their formation. There's no time for evolution. If we nudge a few percent in the other direction, then no elements heavier than helium form, no carbon, no life, not even any chemistry, no complexity at all. That was from a documentary he did. So the question becomes, what's the best explanation for this? Is it God? Is it an intelligent agent with a mind that had the ability to plan ahead and think this out with an end goal like we do as humans, right? We talked about humans, how we do this. Or is it just chance? Did we get lucky? And then we just got lucky as one of several universes? Or is it just bound to happen? It just happened. It was bound to happen. That's similar to chance as well. It just necessarily had to happen. So, of course, I believe number one makes the most sense. As you probably know. The other thing you want to think about, why the universe can even be comprehended. Why can we even do science? Why are the laws of nature set up the way they are that scientists can do their observations? Why is the Earth far enough away from the moon and the sun and everything set up so we can do these observations? Why isn't the universe chaotic? It's orderly. The laws of nature are there, and we can do science and do amazing scientific discoveries. So why is it even comprehensible? Okay. To just take those things science takes those things for granted. They start with those things. They just do their science, but we're asking, why can you even do science? Okay. One of the reasons we definitely, as I said, one of the main reasons we need a perfectly set up universe is because we need a perfectly set up Earth as well. So to plan ahead a universe is to plan ahead for planet Earth. And that's why these guys, for example, the book Rare Earth, how sometimes in the news they'll have an article out saying, we found another Earth-like planet. No, they haven't. They do not know it's like Earth. Okay. There's no way to know because they can't go there. I mean, they can speculate, but as they say in this book, Rare Earth, we are the only, we're in the only zone. We're in the Goldilocks zone where life is hospitable, where life can happen. We're in a certain area specifically that life can take off and start to work correctly as we are on planet Earth. And it has to be in the right universe. So that's another argument somewhat against aliens, by the way, because as far as we know, we are in the only universe that allows life that we know, that we've tested and measured at this point. Now, could there be another universe out there? We don't know. We haven't found it. We can't test it. It's speculative. Okay, but at this point, we are in that only hospitable zone. We have a hospitable universe that allows life to get going on Earth. And Earth has to be set up precisely as well so we can exist. So another argument, premise one, premise two, conclusion. If planet Earth is fine-tuned for life, we're talking about the Earth now, not the universe, the Earth, then the best explanation of the fine-tuning the planet Earth is a personal God. Planet Earth is fine-tuned for life, therefore the best explanation for the fine-tuning of Earth is a personal God as well. Okay, now remember, as you may or may not know, people still like to get in those creation evolution debates, and the evolutionists try to use evolution as their go-to argument against God, that evolution's put God out of a job, which is so fallacious, it's ridiculous. And then we have Christians that are trying to constantly debate, creation, evolution, it's creation or evolution. Well, for another time, there's about 7 or 8 different definitions of evolution. There's about 8 different kinds of creation models, last I looked. But here's the point. Before you even get to biological evolution on Earth, the kind you study like Darwin stuff, you can't even get to that until these 3 things are in place. You need the perfect universe. You need the right universe, a life-permitting universe I just talked about. You need the right planet. You need a fine-tuned planet that allows life to get going. And you still have to show how life can come from non-life. You have to show how first life got going, which we haven't figured out yet, the origin of life. I mean, as far as in science, they haven't figured it out. So I always tell people want to argue about evolution. I just bring up these 3 points. It's like, you're jumping the gun. You're way over here, but you have to account for these 3 things before you even get to biological evolution. Okay. So would these arguments lead to a personal God? I think they do, because I think that fine-tuning shows an intelligent agent who designed these features, a causal agent who designed these features for the existence and the benefit of human beings, and is at a minimum many orders of magnitude more intelligent, knowledgeable, inventive, creative, and more powerful than we as humans. And we know that intellect, knowledge, and inventiveness, creativity, and power attributes of a personal being. We have those qualities as well, right? But we know we need a being that's way beyond our abilities, beyond human abilities to do that, to pull off a universe and an earth for us to live on, okay? So definitely a personal being. So, when a guy named Paul Davies wrote this in the New York Times back in 2007, he got in a lot of trouble. Paul Davies is not a Christian. He's some kind of deist. I mean, I think he believes in some sort of general creator, but he's not a professing follower of Jesus. Teaches physics at, I believe, Arizona State or University of Arizona, one of those two schools. He's written a ton of books. I think he's Australian, but he wrote an article, 2007, called Taking Science on Faith. And this ticked a lot of atheists off. Because he said in the article, he said, all science proceeds on the assumption that nature is ordered in a rational and intelligible way. Davies observed the scientists take the orderly laws of physics on faith and that those laws are all expressed as tiny mathematical relationships. He then asked the questions he's not supposed to ask, but where do these laws come from? And why do they have the form that they do? Basically, what Paul Davies was asking is that why at the beginning of the universe, why are these laws that came to existence, why are they so precise and why are they set up that we can do science so well? You see, at the beginning of the universe, that is when science began, because that is when the laws of nature come into existence and science, they observe these laws. Science makes observations and they do their experiments, but there is no science without these laws of nature, okay? And those had a beginning point. So you have to explain where those laws came from, why they work the way they do. Okay, that's what Davies is talking about. He's saying here, why do these laws, why are they so mathematical? Why do they work the way they do? Why are they so precise and orderly that we can do our science? He's not even a Christian. Boy, he got in trouble they got real mad at him for asking that question, but he should ask that question. Okay, so in the beginning of the universe, we had the beginning point when the cosmological evidence came in. They said, oh my gosh, it looks like the universe did have a beginning. We thought it had always existed. Now we know there was nothing. Now we know there's something. But at this beginning point, there was no, before the beginning of the universe, there was no time, space, matter, because they're codependent. And then the scientific evidence came out that the universe had a beginning. And that obviously upset a lot of atheists as well, because they thought the universe had always existed. It was eternal, right? So whatever is that cause of the universe, because that's the effect. The effect is nature is the effect. The natural world comes to existence at that beginning point. What is the cause, right? The cause would have to be something outside space. It would have to be outside time. It'd have to be non-material, because there is no matter before the beginning of the universe. It'd have to be powerful. It'd have to be very smart and wise to create a universe like that. And it'd have to be a personal being to make a choice to create a universe. So all of these attributes fit some of the attributes of the God of the Bible, okay? You have to account for a cause for the beginning of the universe. So when you look at, oops, sorry, let me go back here. There is something that we, this is another argument, premise one, premise two, conclusion. So this is the way this argument goes. So the laws of nature cannot be the ultimate explanation of the cosmos because they cannot explain themselves. Premise two, therefore, the laws of nature require an explanation for their existence beyond nature and its laws. Conclusion, the best explanation is a causal agent or God as a lawgiver who created the cosmos according to mathematical principles. So there's a lot of mathematicians believe in God, by the way. Okay, I'm going to skip that part. There's something we also need to know, that everything in the universe, after the beginning of the universe, becomes dependent. The universe is a dependent thing. We're all dependent, right? We're all contingent or dependent beings. We depend upon something else to exist. Okay. So if that star at the beginning of the universe, all contingent dependent things start, that means you need a cause outside the universe that is not dependent on anything. Okay, you need a first cause that is uncaused, not dependent. It is an ultimate explanation. That's what we mean by what God is a necessary being. He has to exist. Okay, so everything after the beginning of the universe becomes dependent. Everything's physical and everything's dependent. We are in that realm. The earth's in that realm. The universe is in that area, dependent. Everything's dependent, but we need a cause that isn't dependent on anything, and that is God. Okay, you need a necessary being. Okay, let me go over one more design argument, and then we'll talk. Okay, we'll have a little discussion time. There's another really interesting argument that has come out, and that's the biological information theory argument, or genetic, related to your genetic code. So a lot of these have been written in that book. I mentioned the God hypothesis, and also Stephen Meyer's other work. He's the expert on this. But you can, get some of these books, or you get the Stephen Meyer's book, The God Hypothesis, that I mentioned. Basically, it works like this. So your DNA in your body, they're the instruction or the blueprints for the human cells. Okay, you have a giant genetic code inside you with all these letters. I don't know if you've ever seen the entire genetic code. It's huge. All these letters, these sequences. It's amazing. But basically, it tells a living cell. The DNA tells the cell, or it helps encode functional proteins. It basically it's like the job. It's like the boss of your cells. It's like the instruction or blueprints for the human cell. These instructions have to be there in order for this to happen. Where do these instructions come from, by the way? Bill Gates once said, DNA is like a software program, only much more complex than anything we devise. Even Richard Dawkins, who's a staunch atheist, says DNA is the genetic code is truly digital, exactly the same sense as a computer code. So you have a code in your body, okay, the equivalent of a computer code. Now, I don't know about you, but I know every computer code that's ever been made came from an intelligent mind. That's generally what I've always learned. So these 4 letters, these like you see in your genetic code, they encode information into digital form. They comprise DNA, which encodes the information into digital form. So to be functional, protein has to have a very specific sequence. So like as Francis Crick says, any particular protein in amino acid must be joined up in the right order. So basically what we're asking is, how can these letters get in the right sequence in order to encode proteins correctly? How did nature find a way to do this on its own? Okay, quite amazing if it did. But I think you guys know that when you have a blueprint, if you ever build a house or someone built a house for you, blueprints or anything, like if they're done on computers now when you buy a house, I know they do it on computer. I used to build houses in my 20s, so we actually had the physical ones. We're old school. But those are instructions, right, on the blueprint. And that information that went on that blueprint was already stored in the mind of the architect before he even wrote that down, right? Just like all things. Just like when you get an instruction manual for your computer, instruction manual for your car, instruction manual you have in your glove compartment, which you look at once every 20 years. Whatever instruction manual, it always comes from a mind, right? A mind wrote that instruction manual. Just like when a computer programmer writes the instructions for a computer, before the instructions are even written, he had that information in his mind. Okay, then he coded it, or he wrote it and wrote the instructions in the computer. Okay, so my point is that this kind of stuff shows that the DNA in your body, the information for your DNA, had to come from an intelligent mind as well, because information comes from a mind. It always comes from a mind. Instruction manuals come from mind. Codes come from minds. So that's another argument for the fact that there is a designer, an intelligent mind behind your DNA code, or the instruction, the information that is in your DNA code that is needed, DNA code. Now, one last thing. Sometimes people will say, well, you give these arguments for God and you're just plugging God in there. you're plugging God in there, and we thought that we at one point we thought God did this or God did that. Then we found a scientific explanation. So they say that they accuse us of what's called the God of the gaps. That's where you don't know what the issue is. Like I said, you invoke God to explain something. Well, these arguments for that, giving the scientific arguments, are not God of the gaps arguments. They're based on what we do know, not what we don't know. Okay. And the problem with science sometimes, that people only think science is a way to answer everything, they kind of employ what's called nature of the gaps. That's where they think like nature by itself will fill in every explanation, that there's no God, that nature will do everything. And that's why you have to understand that a lot of science is just built on philosophy. Okay, so if someone says to you the natural world is all there is, that's not really a scientific explanation. That's a philosophical claim. That's what we call metaphysical claim. So science only studies the natural world. It studies natural explanations. It doesn't allow God in the mix. That's debated right now why they should or shouldn't. But the point is that science is kind of already set up the way it's set up. Its limitations. Okay. It can only study natural cause and effect relationships. It doesn't really allow intelligent design in there. Now, that's why intelligent design, as far as all the books have been written, and the whole movement has tried to get science to open up a little more and show that you can look for other kinds of causes that are basically what we call intelligent causes as well. Okay. All right. So that's about it for tonight. I just wanted to do some design arguments. I think that what we need to do is get people to understand the design intuition they have and bring some of those things out, talk about these effects. Remember, if someone says to you, how do we know God exists? We know God exists by his effects. We know God exists by his effects. He's left us his effects. We can look at cause and effect relationships, like I said, and we ask what caused those things, right? That's why people have this design intuition in them. Okay, now we'll talk about later on when we do the 12 points, we'll talk about the effects of history God's left. He's left his effects in history through Jesus, right? That's where we get the Bible. But right now, we're not using the Bible. We're talking about God without using the Bible. As I said, last week, you need other things on your tool belt besides the Bible. Talk about God, okay? It's a good thing, but it can't be the only thing. At least if you want to engage the world around you, I don't know how engaged you are, what your goals are. But anyway. All right. So let's stop there. And I'm going to stop recording.